Let's head out to the fan hotline. He covers the team for Cleveland.com, joins us every Wednesday at 9:20. It's Dan Labbe. Dan, what's going on?
Hey, Jake, how you doing?
We're doing pretty good right about now. I would say, Dan, you know me. I'm a Shedeur supporter, so after Sunday, I would say it'd be pretty hard not to be feeling good right about now.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the game we've been waiting for, and then some. And for him to do it, I thought he protected the football well with that one exception. And then when they needed him to make some plays late, almost led them back from down 14. It was as impressive a game that we've seen from a rookie quarterback in a long time, especially here.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Dan, from what you saw against the Raiders and the Niners to then what we saw against Tennessee, obviously, defense is included because a lot of people want to throw that out there, but how big of a leap did we genuinely see out of Shedeur playing the position?
I mean, I think it was significant. It felt like he had a better feel for just sort of what he was seeing out there. He was making quicker decisions. I thought for the most part his footwork was better, and he really, he made decisions. He was throwing the football away, and he wasn't forcing things when they weren't there. He was letting, he was living to see another play, living to see another series. Not every play had to be, I need to do something spectacular. And the one time where it was that's when he threw the interception. So, and he talked about that today and kind of learning from that. So I thought that was really the big step forward. Is he just felt in control in a lot of the game. He didn't force things. He made the throws that were there, obviously hit a couple of big plays, the one to Judy, hit a few to Fannin, and then, of course, late in the game, leads those 2 touchdown drives.
So would you say it's fair to say now at this point that he's opened the conversation? Not that we've reached there, but the conversation is absolutely legitimate now about skipping a quarterback in the 2026 draft and allowing Shedeur to play the following year?
I think this is the first game where you can sort of see what that looks like. The first 2 games, the Raiders game, he had the 2 big plays, but it was a little rocky. And then I think there were some steps back against the 49ers. But, if we see, I'm not saying he has to throw for 350 yards every game in these last 4, but if he continues to look under control, if he's efficient, not turning the ball over, and the offense looks good, and then if there's some opportunities maybe for him to lead some drives late, maybe pull an upset along the way, I think this is the first game where you can really look at it and say, all right, we can really entertain this idea now. He's got something to really build on.
So, Dan, you look at the final 4 games he has ahead of him, Bears, Bills, Steelers, and Bengals. What does he need to do over these next 4 games to solidify that fact of you want to roll forward with me and give real reasonable doubt to the Browns of drafting somebody in the 2026 class?
I think, first of all, I think it's great that he's playing, 3 teams here that are, either fighting for the playoffs, fighting for divisions, all of that. So these games are really meaningful for these other teams. Now, that Bengals game, we'll see in Week 18, but these next 3 are super meaningful for the teams they're playing. And again, I just think it comes down to, it's incredible to me how quickly he's picking up on things and how quickly he's identifying mistakes and not repeating them. So I think if he continues to do that, continues to kind of build that connection with Harold Fannin. That's been huge for him. Be able to continue to hit those big plays down the field, protect the football and not make that bad. Again, for as great as he played, that interception gave Tennessee the ball on a short field and they took the lead. So just understanding those situations a little better, which again, he's acknowledged. And I think he does understand what he did wrong there. So I think that's really what it's all about, is efficiency, protecting the football, and then adding that level of explosiveness to this offense that we've seen these last few weeks.
Dan, knowing the quarterbacks that you're going up against, and obviously the fact that you just pointed out that these are big games for the next 3 teams you have coming up, how much would outplaying the opposing quarterback on the other side actually do to further that conversation?
I mean, I think it always helps. If we're talking about Caleb Williams, obviously, look, that's a former number 1 pick, and I know he hasn't maybe lived up to that, but, just like he outplayed Cam Ward on Sunday, I think it would be meaningful if he outplayed a former number 1 pick on, a recent number 1 pick this Sunday. Josh Allen, definitely that would, if he shows up and outplays Josh Allen, I don't know what we're going to be talking about on this radio hit on Wednesday. I mean, maybe we are talking about Shedeur Sanders, franchise quarterback at that point. And, the same goes for Aaron Rodgers. Obviously not the same Aaron Rodgers, but he played pretty well on Sunday. And so, if he shows that he kind of belongs on the field with those guys, I think that's significant.
Dan, it's been brought up on the station on other shows and stuff that they feel that winning a game actually matters for Shedeur, that he needs to go through it and prove that he can win one of these games to convince the Browns. Would you feel that same way? Does winning matter at all in this for him?
I mean, I think it matters. I don't know if it's a deal breaker, though, necessarily. Like I think it's unfair to say, okay, Shedeur needs to go out there and beat the Buffalo Bills. That's a big ask. Now, if he does it, great. But I don't know that that's necessary. Does he have to go out there and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers? I don't know if I would say that. And when you look at this Titans game, certainly they didn't win that game, but he led 2 drives to put them in position to either tie or take the lead. If they hit one of those 2-point tries, we're going to overtime, and maybe we are having a discussion about them winning that football game. So I don't know that they necessarily have to win one of these games. It would certainly help his case if they could steal 1 or 2 of these games. But when you consider the opponents and kind of the talent level that the Browns have on the offensive side of the ball, if they can just be competitive and he can play well and the offense can look competent, I think that's enough to at least put him into the conversation for being in that quarterback room and having a legitimate chance to start next season.
Dan Labbe, Cleveland.com, with us here on the Fan Hotline. Obviously, a lot of things swirling around Kevin Stefanski-wise, Shedeur, and the connection between them, as it has been for weeks now. How much credit can we openly give Kevin and the staff for the development of Shedeur from, even where he came starting the year, but the 3 games that he's progressed on after seeing Dylan Gabriel hasn't progressed like that, and other quarterbacks under this regime also haven't done it?
I do think they deserve a decent amount of credit. Obviously, Shedeur deserves the credit first. I think the player always deserves the credit first. But, Kevin Stefanski has invested a lot of time in Shedeur Sanders. And we've heard about these meetings they have in the mornings, watching practice film and going over things. And, if Shedeur is making this progress, if we're seeing this improvement, that has to be coming from somewhere. And I think Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees and Bill Musgrave, I think they deserve some credit in this. I know there's a lot of people out there that maybe don't want to give it to him, and we know the conspiracy theories out there that the Shedeur Sanders cult might throw out about Kevin Stefanski. But I do think you can acknowledge that this coaching staff has done a decent job developing him, and we're seeing this weekly improvement. They're obviously getting some messages through to him about his footwork and understanding game management and all of those things.
Dan, we had Todd McShay throw out the idea that the next 4 games for Shedeur, and really this entire window, is basically an audition for the 31 other teams for Shedeur Sanders to continue his future there. Do you get that feeling at all with this team, that this would be an audition for Shedeur and basically using him as a trade asset?
I don't. Just because this team, if they happen to stumble across a guy, a 5th-round pick who could be a starting quarterback for him, that's one of the most valuable assets in football. Any rookie starting quarterback on a rookie deal is a valuable asset. And if you throw in he's a day 3 pick, you think about Brock Purdy, right? Now, Russell Wilson was a 3rd-rounder, so that's a day 2 pick, but that was still a really cheap rookie contract that they got to work with. So if they happen to stumble into a guy that they think can be a starting quarterback, and, with the acknowledgement that we don't 100% know who's going to be making the decisions this offseason, I don't think they would just move on from him and view him as a trade asset. I think that's for a franchise that needs a quarterback and has needed a quarterback for decades, I think that would be foolish to do.
No doubt. And again, Dan Labbe with us here. Dan, a lot of things being thrown out Kevin Stefanski's way as well. A couple of reports that obviously he would garner interest if the Browns were to move off of him. But also now more recently, like Albert Breer on our station and other places alike has alluded to the idea that maybe Kevin would prefer to be somewhere else. Do you think that would be the case, talking to Kevin regularly and the way that this team is going right now?
I've never necessarily gotten that impression that he doesn't want to be here. Now, I'm sure that if for some reason him and Andrew weren't getting along, or he didn't feel that he was wanted or something like that, maybe he'd want to go. But I just think these jobs are so hard to come by. And I think Kevin is, he's a pretty loyal guy. I mean, we're talking about a coach that has been in 2 places pretty much his entire career. He was in Minnesota forever, and now he's been in Cleveland for 6 years. I just don't think this is a guy that wants to start bouncing around the league all over the place. So I do think that, if he were to get fired and he wanted to get right back into it, somebody would hire him, whether it would be a coordinator, a consultant, even a head coach. that shouldn't preclude the Browns from deciding to go a different direction if that's what they think is the right thing to do. But I don't think Kevin necessarily is sitting there thinking about wanting to get out of Cleveland.
Dan, I asked you last week, whether or not a loss to the Titans would greatly impact the job. You seemed like you said, the loss wouldn't mean that much. Now that we saw it happen, they lost to the one-win Titans. Do you think that game played a massive impact on whether or not Kevin's back here next year?
It's really strange because I think because Shedeur played so well, it has overshadowed the fact that this team lost to the one-win Titans. All anyone's talking about is Shedeur and how well he played, and no one's talking about that. And when you look at it, it's just another disappointing loss that this team suffered. So you've got the Jets, you've got the Titans, and we've seen this happen in the past with Kevin Stefanski. I think back to last year when they went to New Orleans after the bye, and they lost to a pretty bad Saints team. He tends to have some of these losses throughout years, and it's not great when you've only won 6 games in 2 years. You really shouldn't be losing to teams like this. So it's been a little bit overshadowed. Now, I don't know that this game changes any decision one way or another. I think we're at a point where if if ownership has an idea of what they want to do, I don't know, barring some miraculous 4-game winning streak here, it's probably, I don't know how much their minds can be changed, I guess, but that was a really disappointing loss, and it's kind of been overshadowed because everyone's just been talking about how great Shedeur was.
So if the Browns, let's play with this scenario, if they did move on from Kevin, seeing Shedeur succeed in what was, is still a Kevin Stefanski offense, even though it's called by Tommy Rees right now, would you consider it a mistake if this team were to go the internal hire route with either Jim Schwartz or Tommy Rees?
I think they could do. I think there's a lot of different ways they could go if they wanted to move on, and I wonder sort of how Tommy Rees would be involved in that. If they would be willing to throw him up there as the head coach, if they would, want to put Jim Schwartz in there and have Tommy Rees be the OC. It's interesting because a lot of the hot candidates, a guy like a Jesse Minter, that's a defensive coach. So if you wanted to hire him, you'd have to get Jim Schwartz out of here. And Jim Schwartz has been your most successful assistant. So I think it's actually a sort of a complicated move if you do decide to move on from this coaching staff, because if you hire a defensive guy, and a lot of the hot names right now are defensive guys, you're basically changing that defensive staff out, and that's the side that's been the most successful. If you want to gamble on Tommy Rees, you could do that, but who knows if Tommy Rees is ready to be a head coach yet. I guess nobody would know better than the Cleveland Browns, but I do think there would be some risk in doing that. So I think this would be a complicated hiring cycle, and maybe, without knowing if Jim Schwartz, obviously didn't go well for him his first time in Detroit, if Jim Schwartz is ready to do that again, and if he could be successful, maybe that's the path of least resistance, is make Schwartz the head coach and Tommy Rees the OC.
All right, Dan, I'm going to have you play with the idea that there's a new coach. The Browns are looking for one more question. If the Browns are trying to find a new head coach, and they did want to move forward with Shedeur, I've heard a lot of people say that that job wouldn't be very attractive, and they think there wouldn't be very many coaches who'd be up to do it just because of all of the noise that comes along with Shedeur. Do you feel like it'd be that difficult to find somebody to be on board with him?
I think it's interesting because obviously we saw a lot of teams pass on him in the draft, but I don't know that necessarily means there aren't guys out there that wouldn't want to work with him. Those decisions are coming from GMs. They're coming probably in some cases from head coaches, things like that. I think you could find a guy, and there's always just the scarcity of the jobs. There's only 32 of these. And so when there's an opportunity to get one, and you could come in and coach Shedeur for a year or two, and that's not your quarterback, right? Like, if it doesn't go well, you can say, well, look, that's not my quarterback. Give me a chance to pick my quarterback. So I think there would be an out if somebody came in and they weren't completely sold on Shedeur Sanders. So I don't know that would be preventative, just because there's so few of these jobs available. When you get an opportunity to get one, you almost have to take it.
Dan, looking elsewhere aside from the quarterback and the coaching staff, Jerry Judy, I would say that it's probably fair to make the statement that a lot of fans were out on Jerry over the way he interacted with the media, the drops, the interaction with Shedeur on the sideline. Obviously had a really good game on Sunday, just 3 catches, but the big 60-yard touchdown catch. Is the window still open in your eyes for Jerry to win fans back over, or to really seal them back in on him being here with 4 games left to go?
Yeah, I mean, it's a performance business. So if he continues to play well, I do think he has a chance to win people back. And look, I think the reality is Jerry's probably going to be here next year just based on his contract. And I think it's a prohibitive contract to really move on from too easily. So I think he'll be here. And I think fans will generally forgive if you perform and you play well and, you make plays like you do on Sunday. So I think there's certainly still a chance that he could do that. And then maybe what you would hope is that the Browns would kind of find in the offseason, put him in a better position where he's not your number one. He's your number two. I think that's where he's best suited to be a number two guy. That's sort of how they're paying him anyway. And then you can kind of let the dominoes fall a little bit, and he might be a little more successful in that role next year. But I certainly there's a chance for him over these 4 games to kind of redeem himself a little.
All right, Dan, looking forward to the Bears game coming up on Sunday. Obviously, last week, run defense got gashed. Tony Pollard over 160 yards. Titans up over 180 total. You parlay that into a Bears rushing attack that has been very strong. How concerned are you going into this for the Browns defense?
I think it's concerning. I mean, we know how brilliant Ben Johnson is, and we know he's sitting there watching what the Titans did, and he's going to try and mimic that. And I think one of the more impressive things, too, that the Titans did was they got that ball out of Cam Ward's hands fast, and that hasn't always been the case. And, it's kind of the same with Caleb Williams. He's someone who's going to hold the ball and try and make plays, but I think, if Ben Johnson can get him to get rid of the ball quickly with Myles Garrett coming, it makes it hard on this defense. So we know Ben Johnson, great offensive mind, loves to run the football. That was a big staple of what they did in Detroit. It's a huge staple of what they do in Chicago. And he's going to see what the Titans did, and he's going to attack the Browns in a lot of the same ways. So I think it's concerning. We're going to see if Jim Schwartz can make these adjustments here this week and try and stem some of what the Titans were able to do, because Chicago's going to attack. That's just what Ben Johnson does.
All right, Dan, we're out of time. We got to run, but, I always appreciate you sitting down, giving us the time. And I said it to Daryl. I'll say it to you. At least we're going to be warm watching this game because, they won't be.
Yeah, that's true. That press box is going to feel really warm on Sunday.
Yeah, well, it'll be warmer than the field, hopefully, at least.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I appreciate you, Dan.
All right, thanks a lot.
Dan Labbe, Cleveland.com, with us there on the Fan Hotline.